My name is Helena Brooks, and I'm 62 years old. I've always believed that love, real love, is proven in silence in the sacrifices nobody sees. For 30 years, I scrubbed floors, washed linens, and carried buckets heavier than my own heart, all so my son Ethan could have a life that didn't smell of bleach and exhaustion. My husband Mark died in a factory explosion when Ethan was 8. There was no insurance payout, no savings, just a burned pair of boots they handed me in a box. I remember staring at those boots on the kitchen table while Ethan slept in the next room. I told myself that night, you can cry tomorrow. Tonight you start surviving. So I did. I worked 2 jobs cleaning offices during the day, cashiering at a 24-hour grocery at night. My hands cracked from the detergents. My spine ached like rusted metal. But Ethan was bright top of his class, always smiling when he came home with another A. He wanted to be a lawyer. One day, Mom, he used to say, I'll make enough so you'll never have to lift a mop again. That promise kept me alive. When he turned 15, he needed a laptop for school projects. I had nothing left but my wedding ring. It was the only thing Mark ever gave me that sparkled. I sold it quietly and told Ethan I'd saved up. He hugged me that night and said, You're the best mom in the world. I believed him. He got into Northwestern University. I was proud, terrified, but proud. Tuition was impossible, but I made it possible. My brother Stephen, who worked in insurance, refused to lend me money, said it was too risky, so I picked up a second cleaning contract and started baking cheesecakes for neighbors on weekends. Sometimes I'd nod off on the bus, wake up 2 stops too late, and laugh about it to myself. I thought exhaustion was the price of love. Years passed. Ethan graduated, joined a prestigious law firm, and met Madeline, a polished young woman from a wealthy family. Her father owned several car dealerships. She had the kind of confidence money teaches the kind that never looks down, only across. When they got married 5 years ago, she insisted on a ceremony at the Oak Ridge Country Club to match their social status, she said. I emptied my last savings to pay for it. Watching Ethan dance with her that night, I thought, this is what I worked for. This is happiness. After that, the visits grew fewer, his calls shorter. When he did come by, he talked about cases and clients, never asked if my back still hurt. I never complained. Love doesn't demand, it waits. But lately there had been strange questions. Ethan asking how much my house might be worth, Madeline wondering about my life insurance, casual smiling curiosity. I brushed it off. People talk about money when they're planning futures, don't they? Then last Tuesday happened. It was one of those crisp Chicago afternoons, sky low and gray, the air smelling faintly of snow. I baked Ethan's favorite cheesecake, the one with lemon zest and vanilla. I thought I'd surprise him at work. Oh. I even wore my nicest coat, the one with the missing button, just in case we took a photo together. When I reached his office, his black SUV was parked in the lot. Silly idea, I know, but I thought, what if I hide inside and surprise him? He always loved surprises when he was little. The car was unlocked. I climbed into the back, crouched behind the seat, clutching the cake box. I could hear the hum of traffic outside, the faint ticking of the car clock. My heart beat like it used to when I watched him perform at school recitals, fast, nervous, proud. Then I heard laughter. The door opened, and Ethan's voice filled the space, deep, smooth, older, but still my boy. No one will suspect a thing he said. The plan's perfect. Madeline's heels clicked on the pavement before she slid into the passenger seat. Her tone was light teasing. Are you sure? What if someone asks questions? She's 62, Ethan replied, almost annoyed. If she falls down the stairs in that old house, it'll look natural. She'll have a heart attack or something. People will just say she was getting old. My hand went cold around the box. I didn't breathe. Madeline chuckled. Well, I suppose it's time. After the funeral, we can sell her place for, what, $350? Add her savings, the life insurance will finally afford that place in Naperville. Stephen's on board, Ethan said. He needs the money after losing his job. Jennifer, too. She thinks Mom's been stingy. They'll all get their share. There was silence, then Ethan's voice, lower, colder. She's lived long enough. The words stabbed through me. My throat burned. I wanted to scream, to grab him, to beg, but I couldn't move. They talked about everything, the stairs, the timing, even how they'd act at the funeral. Ethan spoke like it was a business deal, precise and efficient, the same tone he once used to argue in debate club. My son, my beautiful boy, plotting my death. When they finally stepped out, I stayed there, knees pressed to the floor, the cheesecake crushed beside me. I stared at the frosting smeared across the lid and thought of all the nights I'd baked just to see him smile. I waited 10 minutes before moving. When I finally stepped out of the SUV, the air hit me like knives. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. That night, I sat on the couch, staring at the photo of Ethan and me from his graduation. His arm around me, his smile bright. I'd thought that photo captured love. Now it just looked like a stranger's face. As the clock struck midnight, I whispered to the empty house, "You want me dead, Ethan." My voice cracked. "Then you'll have to bury someone else first." The next morning, I didn't open the curtains. Light felt intrusive, undeserved. My house, once warm with photographs and potted plants, looked like a stage set left after the play had ended. I made coffee but didn't drink it. The bitterness lingered in the air anyway. I sat at the table, replaying Ethan's voice in my mind. "She's lived long enough." He'd said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I wanted to believe I'd misunderstood. Maybe it was a joke, maybe about someone else. But then I remembered the way he'd studied the staircase last time he visited. His fingers brushing the railing, his eyes narrowing at the top step, and Madeline with her soft smile saying, "You should really update your will, Helena. You never know what might happen." No, there was no misunderstanding. My son wanted me gone. By evening, grief had turned into focus. Years of survival had taught me one thing. Pain sharpens you if you let it. So I made a list, not chores, not groceries, evidence. 1. Record everything. 2. Act normal. 3. Find allies. When Ethan called the next day, his voice was sweet, too sweet. "Mom, you up for dinner this Saturday, just you, me, and Maddie? It's been too long." I forced a smile, even though he couldn't see it. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart." "Great," he said. "Wear that blue dress I like, the one from my wedding." He remembered the dress, the one I wore when I gave him away to her. After the call, I exhaled shakily. That invitation wasn't about affection. It was about opportunity. That night, I went to see Karen, my next-door neighbor and my closest friend for 20 years. Karen was 70, retired, with hands that still looked capable of saving lives. She used to be a nurse, the kind that didn't just treat you, but made you believe you'd survive. When she opened the door, her face softened immediately. "Helena, you look pale. Come in." What happened? Inside her cozy living room, surrounded by crocheted blankets and the smell of chamomile, I broke. I told her everything about hiding in the SUV, about what I'd heard. My voice trembled, but I got it all out. Karen listened without interrupting. When I finished, I handed her my phone. I recorded it. I whispered. She put on her glasses, pressed play, and sat back. The voices filled the room, Ethan's confident tone, Madeline's cold laughter. When it ended, the silence was so heavy, it made the clock tick louder. "Those people," Karen finally said, her jaw tightening, "are monsters." "My son," I said softly. "My own son." Karen squeezed my hand. "Then we make sure they can't hurt you." Over the next few days, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I began to spy on my own child. I followed Ethan and Madeline one evening, when they went out for dinner. Their table at the restaurant glowed under low amber light. She ordered champagne. He checked his phone. Their laughter was effortless, carefree, like they had already won. When they left, I waited outside watching them from my car. They looked like any normal couple in love. I kept whispering to myself, "He's my son," like that sentence could change reality. Back home, I dug deeper. Ethan's Instagram post showed expensive restaurants, designer clothes, vacations. Their life was a highlight reel of indulgence. But behind it, I found the cracks. Unpaid credit cards, a car loan overdue, a mortgage application rejected. They were drowning in debt. And my brother Stephen, who'd refused to help me years ago, had lost his job recently. I called my cousin, who told me Stephen had been the one who first joked about my house being a retirement plan at a family barbecue last summer. Everyone laughed then. Now it didn't sound funny. It sounded like premeditation. By Friday, I had a small mountain of notes, phone records, photos, screenshots, bank listings, and my one damning recording. But no matter how much evidence I collected, one truth remained. None of it would matter until they did something. The law doesn't protect you from intentions. Saturday came. I wore the blue dress as Ethan asked. My hands trembled as I buttoned it up. When I looked in the mirror, I saw two Helens, one terrified mother, one woman ready for war. Ethan and Madeline picked me up right on time. Their smiles could have won awards. "You look beautiful, Mom," Ethan said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Madeline added, "You're glowing. Retirement must suit you." I smiled, careful not to let my jaw tremble. "Maybe it's the lighting," I said. The restaurant was expensive crystal glasses, candlelight, polite waiters who smiled too much. They ordered for me without asking. I watched them talk, smooth practice rehearsed. Madeline leaned in mid-meal. Helena, have you been having any dizziness lately? I blinked. No. Why? Oh, just curious, she said. At your age, blood pressure can be unpredictable. Ethan smiled faintly. And those stairs in your house, you're not having any trouble with them, right? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The stairs are fine. We just worry. Ethan said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. You should think about something safer, maybe a one-story condo, Madeline added softly. And update your will, of course, just to be responsible. The words tasted like poison. After dinner, they insisted on walking me to my door. Inside, Ethan flicked on the hallway light and studied the staircase again. He ran his hand along the rail up and down twice. The lighting's bad, he said, and this carpet at the top is loose. Madeline nodded. She could trip any day now. I forced a laugh. Well, if I fall, I'll make sure to fall gracefully. They both laughed politely, but I saw that flicker in Ethan's eyes. Calculation. When they left, I locked the door, leaned against it, and let my knees give out. I sat on the floor for a long time, breathing shallowly, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. Every step they took tonight had been a rehearsal checking lighting, carpet visibility. They were ready, but so was I. Because that night in the quiet hum of my old house, I decided I wouldn't be their victim. I wouldn't die on those stairs. I'd make sure they'd never hurt anyone again. And to do that, they'd have to believe I was dead. For the first time in my life, I wasn't cleaning a mess, I was creating one. I spent the next morning sitting at Karen's kitchen table, the blinds half closed, the air thick with the scent of disinfectant and old coffee. Karen had laid out a notepad, 2 pens, and her reading glasses, the same ritual she used when charting patients back in the hospital days. Helena, she said carefully, if we do this, there's no undoing it. Once you're dead, you stay dead, at least until it's safe. I nodded. If it keeps me alive, I'll vanish as long as it takes. Karen leaned back. Then we plan it properly, every detail. We started with the basics time-place method. Karen knew how to make death look real. She'd spent 40 years watching people die, and more than a few times she'd been the one to pull them back. There are medications that can drop your pulse and breathing so low a young paramedic wouldn't catch it, she said, scribbling notes. We'll need the right dosage, enough to fool them, not enough to lose you for good. I swallowed hard. You really think we can pull it off? Karen met my eyes. If anyone can fake dying and come back to tell the story, it's you. That night, she called an old friend, Dr. Smith, a retired pathologist who owed her a favor from years ago. He was reluctant at first, muttering about legality ethics, but Karen reminded him about a certain incident she'd covered for him back in '92. By morning, he agreed to help. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my porch watching the streetlights flicker. The neighborhood was so quiet, it hurt. I thought of Mark, my husband, the man who used to come home covered in factory dust and still lift Ethan high into the air just to hear him laugh. I whispered into the night. You'd protect him too, wouldn't you? But the truth stung. Ethan didn't need protection. He needed to be exposed. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen and I became co-conspirators. We rehearsed the sequence like a stage play. Who would call 911, what she'd say, where I'd collapse. Karen ordered the medication, a powerful sedative combined with a beta blocker. Dr. Smith prepared a falsified death certificate listing the cause as cardiac arrest. Every time I saw my reflection, I looked a little less like myself. My eyes were hollow from fear, but my hands were steady. On the chosen Sunday, the air was heavy and gray, as if the city knew what we were about to do. Karen arrived at 3 p.m. sharp, her hair tied back, her voice brisk. You ready? She handed me 2 small pills. Once you take these, you'll have maybe 10 minutes before it hits. Lie down on the couch. I'll handle the rest. I hesitated just long enough to glance at the framed photo of Ethan on my mantel. His college graduation, his smile wide, his arm around me. I touched the glass. Goodbye, my boy. Then I swallowed the pills. At first, nothing. Then the edges of the room began to blur like watercolor running in the rain. My heartbeat slowed until it sounded like distant thunder. Karen's voice came from somewhere far away. It's working, she said softly. Stay calm. Just breathe. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt made of stone. The ceiling swayed above me. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, the world smelled like damp concrete and dust. Karen's face hovered over mine, her expression taut with relief. You're okay, she whispered. You're safe. I blinked disoriented. Where? My basement, she said. You've been gone 6 hours. The paramedics came, pronounced you dead at 3:45 p.m. Dr. Smith signed the certificate. They've already taken your body you out. I brought you here right after. As far as everyone knows, you died of a sudden heart attack. I sat up slowly dizzy. And Ethan. Karen reached for her phone. Listen. She played a recording, a voicemail she'd captured from the moment she called Ethan. Ethan. Her voice trembled convincingly. It's Karen. I'm so sorry. I found your mom on the couch. She wasn't breathing. The paramedics tried everything. She's gone. Then Ethan's voice, calm, almost relieved. Oh, that's terrible. Did she suffer? The paramedic said it was quick, Karen lied. That's good, Ethan replied. Then a pause. She'd been having heart issues lately. This was probably for the best. She's at peace now. My stomach turned. I'd never had heart issues. The lie was instant practiced. Karen's eyes softened. There's more. She tapped another file, the audio feed from my hidden home cameras. Ethan and Madeline had gone to my house that same night. Madeline's voice was bright. Can you believe it? She actually died on her own. We didn't have to do a thing. Ethan laughed an easy, hollow laugh. No risk. No questions. Perfect timing. Your mom did us a favor, Madeline said. Then she laughed again. I covered my face, the sound of their laughter echoing in my skull. I wanted to rip the air apart. Karen pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry you had to hear that, but now you know who they are. I nodded, trembling. Let's see what else they do. The next morning, Karen and I sat in front of her computer, watching the live feed from my hidden cameras. Ethan arrived first, using his spare key. Behind him came Madeline, Stephen, and Jennifer. None wore black. None looked sad. Madeline's voice carried through the speaker. Finally. I didn't think this day would ever come. Stephen grunted, going straight to my desk. Let's see what the old lady's been hiding. Jennifer walked toward my jewelry box, flipping it open with a satisfied hum. Real gold, she said. This alone's worth a fortune. I stared at the screen, numb. Each object they touched was a piece of my life, my memories, my sacrifices reduced to dollar signs. Ethan found my financial folder, sat at the kitchen table, and read aloud. Savings $78,000, checking $12, life insurance $150. He looked up and smiled. For this kind of money, I would have killed her myself. Karen gasped. My pulse spiked. They all laughed. Jennifer said, What about the funeral? Ethan shrugged. Cremation. No service. Cheaper and faster. And her friends, Madeline asked. She didn't have many. Just that annoying neighbor, Karen. I'll tell her mom wanted a quiet send-off. I couldn't listen anymore. I turned away from the monitor and pressed my forehead against the cool wall. My tears came slow, not from pain this time, but fury. Karen muted the screen. Helena, she said quietly, you have everything you need. Every word. Every face. I looked up, breathing hard. Not yet. I want them to confess in front of the world. Karen frowned. You want to go public? I want them to see me alive, I said. I want their masks to break on camera. Karen stared at me for a long time. Then we'll need help. Someone who knows how to make noise. She turned her laptop around, showing a news clip of Lisa Anderson, a Chicago investigative reporter known for exposing corruption. Karen smiled faintly. If anyone can help you bring them down, it's her. And that's how the plan to expose them and come back from the dead began. 3 days after my death, my obituary appeared in the local paper. Helena Brooks, beloved mother of Ethan Brooks, passed away suddenly at 62. A private service will be held at the family's request. Private service. No one had requested it, at least not the one still breathing. Reading those words felt surreal. I had become a story, a paragraph, a past tense. But the world kept moving. Cars passed neighbors, watered lawns, and the mail kept coming. Only Karen and I knew the truth. I was hidden beneath a city that already believed I was gone. We spent hours reviewing every recording, every cruel laugh, every word about splitting what's left. Each file was a blade I intended to aim precisely. That night I said it aloud. They don't just deserve punishment, they deserve exposure. Karen didn't look up from her notebook. Then we'll need someone loud enough to be heard. That's when we contacted Lisa Anderson. Lisa's voice on the phone was sharp, brisk, the tone of someone who'd heard too many unbelievable stories. You're saying you faked your death and your son planned to kill you? Yes, I said. And I have proof. Silence on the line. Then email me everything. I sent her the recordings photos and the copy of the death certificate. 2 hours later, she called again. Her voice had changed. I've covered politicians, embezzlers, cults, but this is a family nightmare. If what you sent checks out, we're going to do this publicly. Karen raised an eyebrow when I hung up. She's in. Oh, she's more than in, I said. She wants to make it live. Lisa coordinated with the district attorney's office and 2 local detectives. The plan was simple, but dangerous. We'd let Ethan and the others gather for their inheritance meeting the moment they'd officially divide what was left of my life, and then I'd walk in, alive, with cameras rolling. The DA agreed to keep the charges sealed until the reveal. We want raw reactions, Lisa said. The truth hits harder when they can't edit it. While she worked out logistics, I prepared myself. Watching Ethan and Madeline through the cameras was unbearable. They lived freely, hosting dinners in my house, toasting to new beginnings. I saw Madeline wearing my pearl earrings, once the ones Mark gave me for our anniversary. She laughed as she adjusted them in the hallway mirror. I almost smashed the laptop, but Karen stopped me. You don't fight monsters by becoming one, she whispered. You wait. You strike clean. So I waited. I stayed underground, barely sleeping. Every creak in the house above felt like a ghost walking over my grave. One afternoon, Karen brought me coffee and found me staring at a half-finished letter on the table. To Ethan it began, "You were my reason to wake up for 30 years. And for a while I thought that was enough. But a mother's love should never be blind. You took my sacrifices and turned them into chains. You learned success, not gratitude. And I failed to see it coming." Karen read silently, then placed her hand on mine. "You're writing like a woman preparing to bury her past." I smiled faintly. That's exactly what I'm doing. By Friday, Lisa had everything ready. Police surveillance was set, the news van stationed discreetly down the street. The meeting was planned for Saturday at 3 p.m. That evening, Karen and I sat together in silence, the glow of the computer screen casting long shadows on the walls. On screen, Ethan was pacing my living room, sorting through papers, my will, my bank statements. Madeline sipped wine nearby, her tone casual. "After we sell the house, we should redecorate. I hate the color of these walls." Ethan chuckled. "You'll get your white marble kitchen soon," I whispered to the monitor, over my dead body. Karen chuckled dryly. "Technically, it's already over your dead body." We both laughed, the kind of quiet, bitter laugh that comes from surviving something you can't explain. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of the moment I'd step into that room, how their eyes would widen, how every lie would collapse. But beneath that fantasy, another thought whispered, what if I still loved him? Because no matter how deep the betrayal, a mother's heart doesn't die the way her trust does. At 2 a.m., I stood before the mirror and stared at the face that had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. My reflection looked both familiar and foreign. The dark circles beneath my eyes, the streaks of gray in my hair, they told a story of someone who had already been to her own funeral. "This ends tomorrow," I whispered, "one way or another." Morning came heavy and pale. Karen brewed strong coffee while we went through the checklist. One final time. Hidden microphones, backup recordings, the news signal. Lisa called. "Everything's in position. Are you ready to become a ghost that walks again?" I looked out the window at the faint sunlight breaking through the clouds. "I've been haunting them long enough," I said. "It's time they see who's holding the flashlight." Karen chuckled softly. "That's my girl." As the clock ticked toward 3, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not revenge, something steadier. Resolve. I wasn't just a victim coming back from the dead. I was a mother reclaiming her story. Saturday, 2:45 p.m. The air outside felt unnaturally still, as if the world was holding its breath. I wore the red dress I'd bought for Ethan's wedding, the same one Madeline said was too bright for a mother of the groom. Now the color felt perfect. Red like survival, red like warning. Karen helped me fasten the last button. Her hands trembled slightly. "Are you sure about this, Helena? Once you walk through that door, there's no taking it back." I looked at my reflection, pale skin, gray hair, tied neatly, lips painted the same soft crimson as the dress. "They already buried me once, Karen. I'm just showing them what crawled out." At exactly 300, we parked down the street from my house. Lisa Anderson's van sat nearby, disguised as a standard news vehicle. Inside were 2 police officers, the district attorney, a sound engineer, and Lisa herself, blonde, confident eyes, sharp with curiosity and empathy. She greeted me with a steady handshake. "We're live in 5 minutes. 2 cameras, one inside, one from the porch. The moment you step in, I'll follow. Officers will enter on my cue. You sure you want to do this live? I nodded. They planned my death like a business deal. I want the world to see their faces when the deal falls apart. Lisa smiled faintly. Then let's make history. At 3:12, I opened my phone and watched the feed from the hidden camera. Ethan sat in my favorite chair, papers spread across the coffee table. Stephen and Jennifer were on the couch, whispering and smiling nervously. Madeline poured herself a glass of wine, her nails painted black, her laughter light. Let's get started, Ethan said. According to Mom's will, I'm the sole heir. But of course, we'll split everything fairly, Jennifer giggled. That's very generous of you, Ethan. We're family, he said smoothly. Family takes care of each other. I glanced at Lisa. Now. The cameraman moved, first followed by the sound operator. Then Lisa stepped forward, microphone ready. 2 officers flanked the door. Karen touched my arm gently. Go get them. My hand shook only once as I slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open. The moment I stepped inside the house, smelled the same lavender cleaner, faint dust, the ghost of my life. I could hear voices from the living room. Madeline was the first to see me. She froze mid-sip, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. The sound made everyone turn. Ethan's papers scattered as he stood. His face went white, his mouth falling open. Jennifer screamed, clutching Stephen's arm. I walked slowly toward them, heels clicking on the hardwood. Hello, everyone, I said calmly. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if time had folded in half, the living and the dead sharing one air. Ethan finally spoke, his voice cracking. Mom, but you're dead. We saw the death certificate. I smiled faintly. You always did believe what was on paper more than what was in front of you. Lisa stepped in behind me, her microphone raised. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Anderson from Channel 7. We're broadcasting live from the home of Helena Brooks, a woman who faked her own death to expose a murder plot planned by her own family. The room erupted in chaos. Madeline stammered. This is insane. She's lying. We thought she was dead. Stephen's voice shook. You can't just walk in here, but Lisa's cameraman was already capturing their faces. The panic, the denial. I raised a small remote. Shall we play the truth? From a speaker behind me, the recording began. Ethan's voice, crystal clear. She'll have a natural accident. The stairs are perfect. Then Madeline, after the funeral, we sell her place for $350. Laughter followed theirs. Jennifer started crying. Stephen buried his face in his hands. Madeline took a step back, muttering, It's taken out of context. Ethan's voice trembled. You can't use that. It's illegal. Illegal, I said quietly. You plotted my death, Ethan. Lisa signaled to the officers. You're all under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. As the handcuffs clicked, Ethan looked at me, eyes wide, with a mix of rage and disbelief. You set us up. I stepped closer. You planned to kill me for money. I just made sure everyone knew it before you had the chance. Madeline spat through tears. You'll regret this. I shook my head. No, dear. You'll regret thinking I wouldn't fight back. One of the officers guided her toward the door. Another read Ethan his rights. Cameras kept rolling the red light, blinking steadily like a heartbeat. Lisa whispered, The world's watching Helena. I turned toward the camera. For every mother who gave up everything for her children, this is for you. Don't let anyone tell you your love makes you weak. It makes you dangerous. Ethan was still shouting as they led him out. You're no mother. I met his eyes one last time. No, Ethan. Not yours anymore. When the door closed behind them, silence filled the house, deep, clean, holy. Lisa lowered her mic. That was the most powerful thing I've ever seen. I sank into the chair Ethan had been sitting in minutes earlier. Funny, I said softly. It's the first time I've ever felt alive in this house. Outside, the news van's red light blinked off. The world now knew everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like proof. The morning after the broadcast, my face was everywhere. The mother who outsmarted her murderers. Family betrayal caught live. Even the national networks picked it up. Clips of me walking into my own living room played on repeat, the red dress, the calm voice, the shock on their faces. But while the world called it justice, I called it mourning. Because what they didn't see, what the cameras never showed, was me sitting alone in a motel room that night, staring at the stillness of the empty bed, realizing I'd destroyed my family to save myself. Karen stayed with me for a few days. She'd make coffee in the mornings and pretend not to notice when I cried quietly into my cup. "You did what you had to do," she said gently one morning. "You didn't kill them, Helena. You just let them show the world who they really were." Still, a mother's heart doesn't heal by headlines. 3 months later, the trial began. The courthouse smelled like polish and nerves. Every morning, I'd walk past reporters shouting questions. "Do you forgive them? Was it worth it?" And every time I'd keep walking. Forgiveness wasn't something I could hand out like a statement. It had to be earned. Inside the courtroom, Ethan sat at the defense table in a gray suit, hair shorter than I remembered. He didn't look up when I entered. Madeline sat beside him, her hand trembling as she adjusted her jacket. Stephen and Jennifer were across the aisle, avoiding my gaze. The prosecutor started with the recordings, every sentence, every cruel laugh. The jury winced. One woman actually covered her mouth when Ethan's voice said, "For that kind of money, I'd have killed her myself." Ethan's lawyer tried to spin the story. He called me a controlling, emotionally manipulative parent who suffocated her son's independence. He said the recordings were out-of-context jokes between family members. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand slowly. My hands didn't shake. I told them everything about Mark's death, the factory accident, the nights I worked 3 shifts and still packed Ethan's lunches at dawn. I told them about selling my wedding ring for his laptop, about every bill I paid while pretending not to be tired. And then I told them about the day in the SUV, the way my heart broke when I heard my son's voice saying I'd lived long enough. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The only sound was a reporter's pen scratching across paper. The defense attorney stood. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, forcing a sympathetic smile, "isn't it true that your actions, the fake death, the deception prove you're capable of manipulation?" I looked him straight in the eye. "If protecting yourself from being murdered is manipulation, then I suppose I'm guilty." A few jurors nodded. One even smiled faintly. Over the next 3 weeks, the courtroom became my second home, the stage where my pain was replayed in evidence form. The prosecution showed the video of the confrontation, the live footage that had gone viral. When the recording played of Jennifer saying she was so healthy for her age, half the jury turned away disgusted. By the end, there was no doubt. The verdict took less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Ethan was sentenced to 20 years. Madeline got 15. Stephen 12. Jennifer 10. When the judge read the sentences, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just sat still, feeling something unclench inside me, the tension of years dissolving into quiet exhaustion. Ethan finally looked at me as they led him out. His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were empty. "Mom," he whispered, "you won." I shook my head. "No, Ethan. Nobody won." After the trial, Lisa visited me one last time for a follow-up interview. Cameras off. She asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought for a long time. "I regret that love can turn into something you have to survive," I said, "but not surviving." When the interview aired, I didn't watch it. I sold the house soon after too many ghosts in those walls. The realtor said it would fetch $350,000 easily. I told her to take it. I didn't need profit. I needed peace. I moved to a small cottage near Karen in Naperville. 2 bedrooms, a tiny garden, a creaky porch that sounded like laughter when it rained. I started volunteering at a local bookstore 3 days a week. I liked the smell of paper quiet stories that didn't demand anything of me. With what was left of my savings, I created a small scholarship fund in Mark's name for children who'd lost a parent. Then I made another for single mothers trying to send their kids to college. Letters began arriving, hundreds of them. People from all over wrote to say they'd seen my story. Some were angry, others grateful, but most were broken in familiar ways, betrayed by families, stolen from, abandoned. I started replying. Then one day someone suggested we meet in person. That's how the support circle began, 5 women sitting in a coffee shop on a rainy afternoon telling stories nobody else wanted to hear. Within months, there were 20 of us. Some laughed, some cried, some just listened. We called ourselves the Chosen Family. Karen was always there, sitting at my side, her eyes proud. "You turned pain into something good," she told me once. That's what real survival looks like. 2 years passed before anything changed again. One morning I checked my mail and found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a 12-page letter written in Ethan's handwriting. The first line read, "Mom, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to say this anyway." I sat down, the words blurring through tears. The letter shook in my hands. The paper smelled faintly like the disinfectant used in prison's sterile, lonely cold. Ethan's handwriting was neater than I remembered, smaller, as if he'd shrunk himself down to fit inside the guilt. Mom, I think about that day every night. The day you walked into the living room. The day I saw a ghost that was still alive. I deserved that moment. I deserved every second of it. He wrote about the first months in prison, how he couldn't sleep because every time he closed his eyes, he saw my face calm and unbroken, watching him be led away. Madeline divorced me, said I ruined her life. Stephen and Jennifer don't talk to me. Everyone hates me, but I don't blame them. I used to think success meant control, that I could control you too, even your death. I see now that what you gave me wasn't control, it was everything. I stopped reading halfway through and pressed the letter to my chest. My tears weren't from anger anymore. They were from exhaustion, from remembering the little boy who once clung to my apron strings and whispered, "Don't die, Mom." And he almost made that happen. Karen found me sitting on the porch an hour later, the letter trembling in my hands. She didn't ask questions, just poured me a cup of tea and waited. When I finished reading, I looked up at her. He says he's in therapy, that he finally understands what he did. Karen nodded slowly. Do you believe him? I believe he's suffering, I said quietly. And maybe that's a start. That night, I sat by my window, the lamplight soft against the old wood. I took out a piece of paper and began to write. Ethan, I read your letter 3 times. The first time I cried. The second I was angry. The third I felt something I didn't expect, peace. I don't know if forgiveness is something I can give completely, but I'm willing to try. Maybe not for you, but for me. Carrying hate is another kind of prison, and I've lived in one long enough. I will visit you once a year, not as the mother you betrayed, but as the woman who survived you. Let's see if you can become someone worth meeting again. Mom, when I sealed the envelope, my hands were steady. I didn't mail it for 3 days. I wanted to be sure it came from strength, not pity. On the 3rd morning, I dropped it in the postbox and walked away without looking back. Weeks passed. Life found a rhythm again. I woke early each morning to the smell of coffee drifting from Karen's kitchen next door. We'd sit on our porches and talk across the fence about small things. Birds nesting in the gutter, the stubborn hydrangea that refused to bloom the way the sun hit the trees just right around 8 a.m. Once a month, I hosted our support group, the Chosen Family. We met in the bookstore after closing. There were new faces every time. Women, men, old, young, all carrying the same invisible wounds. We shared coffee stories, sometimes silence. One evening, a woman named Emily joined. She was 58, gentle-eyed with a tremor in her voice. Her daughter had placed her in a nursing home and drained her savings. She said she'd watched my story online from her hospital bed and realized she wasn't alone. We became close. She visited often. Sometimes she'd stay overnight when the memories got heavy. I told her about Mark, about Ethan, about the letter. She'd listen, then squeeze my hand and whisper, "You turned your pain into proof that love doesn't die, it just changes shape." I like that. Love changes shape. 2 years after the trial, I went to visit Ethan in prison for the first time. The drive there was silent. My palms sweated on the steering wheel. When I saw him across the glass, my heart forgot how to beat for a moment. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes, those gray-blue eyes that once laughed at my bedtime stories, were clearer than I'd ever seen them. He picked up the phone slowly. "You came. I said I would. I didn't think you meant it. I always keep my word, Ethan, even when you didn't." He swallowed hard. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I know," I said softly, "but maybe one day you'll forgive yourself." For a long time, we just sat there separated by glass, breathing the same quiet air. Then the guard tapped the glass, signaling time was up. As I stood to leave, Ethan said, "Mom, thank you for not being the ghost I deserved." I smiled, a small, tired smile. "I told you once, Ethan, you'd have to bury someone else first." Outside, the air smelled of rain. I tilted my face to the sky and let it fall. That night, I wrote my last journal entry about it, the one I keep folded in the back of my notebook. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about remembering who you are when someone tries to erase you. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to rot in someone else's grave. And survival, real survival, is waking up one morning making coffee and realizing the world still has light left for you. I'm 64 now. I work part-time at the bookstore. Karen still brings me breakfast on Sundays. Emily and I walk by the lake every Thursday, feeding ducks like children who never had to grow up. Sometimes strangers recognize me. They say I was brave, that I inspired them. I always smile politely and say I'm just alive. Because that's what I am, alive. And for the first time in a very long time, that's enough.